Okay, excellent. Good evening, everyone. I believe we are now live on YouTube, so I'm going to begin the presentation for the open house for 10 Pleasant Avenue. Just bear with me 1 second while I get my screen sharing going here. Do that. Okay, if I can just get one of my co-hosts to confirm that they can see the slide okay.
Slide is visual, yes.
Thank you so much. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the open house for 10 Pleasant Avenue regarding applications for official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. My name is Taya Devlin, and I am a senior planner in the city's Planning and Building Services Department. My role today is to facilitate this open house, and I am joined by my colleagues from the planning team who may jump in from time to time to assist me with facilitation of the meeting. A few housekeeping items to note. Please keep your microphones muted and cameras off until it is your turn to speak. If you are participating in the Zoom meeting and also have the YouTube live stream playing, please ensure the YouTube video is muted and that any background noises that you might have wherever you are also kept to a minimum. The open house is intended to share information about the applications for 10 Pleasant Avenue that the city has received and is currently reviewing. The open house is also an opportunity to receive questions and comments regarding the proposed amendments and materials submitted with the applications. There will be an opportunity for all participants to speak following this presentation by staff and a presentation from the applicant's consulting team. No decisions are being made today, and any comments or questions that you may have following the open house can be sent to my attention by mail, email, or phone. And all of the plans and materials discussed in this meeting and submitted with the application can be accessed at stcatharines.ca/development. So the Planning Act establishes a process that staff are to follow when reviewing applications for official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. This open house forms part of that process. The applications were received by the city at the end of April and deemed complete within 30 days of receipt. And the notice of this open house was issued on June 13th. The materials submitted are being reviewed by staff and external agencies currently. Planning staff will review all comments received and prepare a report which will be published in advance of the statutory public meeting. At this time, no date has been set for the public meeting, and staff will issue notice of the public meeting when a date is selected. Council may make a decision on the applications following the public meeting, and then the decision of council is appealable in accordance with the Planning Act. So the yellow box there just indicates where we are in this planning process. And so as you can see, we are at the early stages in the review period. The subject property is located within St. Patrick's Ward, Ward 4, and has frontage of approximately 98 meters along Pleasant Avenue to the north and 99 meters along Thomas Street to the east. The subject lands were previously used as a parking area serving the former employment lands to the north and west beyond Ontario Street. Alex Mackenzie Park is located to the east, highlighted in green on this image, and contains a baseball diamond, tennis courts, and indoor arena. The property at 10 Pleasant Avenue is located within the Ontario Street Corridor Secondary Plan Study area, which is a project recently initiated by the city. Staff are required to consider planning applications within established timelines, and the secondary plan study does not prevent the submission of a planning application. Further, this application was initiated prior to staff initiating the secondary plan study. Matters pertaining to other lands within the study area or other city programs can be more appropriately addressed through other engagement opportunities. So if you are interested in some of these other projects, please do reach out to me and I can direct you to the appropriate engagement tools that we have. Specific to the Ontario Street Corridor Secondary Plan Study, there is a link listed there on the screen stcatharines.ca/Ontario Street study if you're interested in future plans for the overall area. So that just locates where this site is within that study area boundary. Now, the property itself at 10 Pleasant Avenue is approximately 1.16 hectares in size. An area of 465 square meters will be required to be dedicated to the city for the purposes of road widening, resulting in a reduction of the lot area to 1.11 hectares. The proposal indicates a total of 365 residential units, including 351 apartment units and 14 townhouse dwellings. There is also 490 square meters of commercial area proposed on the ground floor at the corner of Pleasant Avenue and Thomas Street, and parking for the site is proposed to be provided primarily underground. The property is currently designated medium density residential in the city's official plan. This designation permits a variety of residential uses at a density generally between 25 and 99 units per hectare. The site is surrounded by lands designated mixed use to the north, parkland and open space to the east, medium density residential to the south, and community commercial to the south and west. The application for official plan amendment proposes to designate the lands high density residential. The high density residential designation permits a variety of residential uses at a density of 85 units per hectare or greater and does not establish a maximum height. The materials submitted with the applications indicate a proposed density of 329 units per hectare with a mix of townhouses and apartment dwellings to a maximum height of 33 meters for the building and 38 meters to the top of the rooftop mechanical unit. The city's zoning bylaw zones the lands medium density residential with a special provision and holding provision. The lands abutting the site are zoned general employment to the north, major green space to the east, medium density residential to the south, and community commercial to the south and west. The application for zoning bylaw amendment proposes to zone the property high density residential with modifications to the existing special provision and retention of the H1 holding provision. So the proposed amendment would result in fewer permitted dwelling types and a higher density. The modifications proposed to the special provision include site-specific minimum yards, parking, landscaped open space, and maximum height for the apartment, as well as minimum yards and maximum height for townhouses, and a minimum landscape buffer between parking areas and abutting residential zone. The holding provision, H1, exists with the current zoning. The holding provision requires that an environmental site assessment be completed, and if contamination above provincial guidelines is found, a record of site condition shall be submitted to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation, and Parks. The holding provision will remain in place on the subject lands until this condition has been satisfied. The underlying zoning and associated development cannot take place until that H1 holding provision has been lifted. So this is a view of the site from the corner of Pleasant Avenue and Thomas Street. So we're looking sort of southwest. And this is a conceptual rendering of the proposal from a similar vantage point where you can see the concept building. Here we have an elevation of the proposed building as it would be seen along Pleasant Avenue and along Thomas Street. And then this is the view of the proposed townhouses as they would be seen from within the site. So the applications that we've received for official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment will be reviewed and evaluated against provincial, regional, and local policies. Staff considerations include, but are not limited to, land use compatibility, built form, height, shadows, site servicing and traffic, the natural environment, and then detailed site design elements such as facades, lighting, grading and drainage, landscape materials will all be addressed in greater detail through a future site plan approval process. An application for site plan approval has not been received at this time. And leading up to today's open house, staff have received some comments in writing, And there are a few recurring themes within the comments, some of which include density, height and shadows, traffic, potential contamination, specifically on other sites in this area, the secondary plan and community improvement plan. You'll notice there is a black box around the top 4 common themes there, as those are the themes that are more pertinent to the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment, as they fall within planning and land use considerations. The bottom 3, while they are important topics, aren't as relevant or pertinent to the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment planning evaluation. So it is those sort of top 4 themes that would be highly relevant to this review. So for next steps, as I mentioned earlier, the application has been circulated to city departments and applicable external agencies for review. Any comments or questions that you may have can be sent to staff for consideration in review of this application and the formulation of a staff recommendation. Staff will be preparing a report which will be made publicly available prior to the public meeting and subsequent decision by council. The public meeting in front of council will be held at a future date, and please get in touch if you would like to be notified. I'm just going to put my contact information up on the screen for those who don't have it already. And again, a reminder that all of the submission materials provided with these applications can be viewed at stcatharines.ca/development. So with that, just going to get back to our meeting here. Okay, so that concludes my presentation. I am going to ask the agent for the applicant to give their presentation next. And David, I will pull up your slides and get that ready for you in just a second. I just wanted to make a reminder for those who joined maybe since I did my initial introduction. There will be a presentation by the agent for the applicant. And then after that, there will be time for comments and questions. So David, just give me 1 second and I'll get back to sharing my screen here.
Thank you. While you're doing that, I do want to thank everybody for attending this evening. My name is David Folletta, and I'm a registered professional planner with Bousfields. And we were retained by the ownership group in order to be the planning consultant on this file. And again, thank you for coming out. I know it's a beautiful summer evening, and probably the last place you want to be is on a long meeting, but we really do appreciate you being here this evening and spending time with us to discuss this exciting project. In terms of what we're going to go through tonight, I do want to mention a couple of other people that are with me this evening. Paradise McDaniel is one of the planners from our firm that will be assisting. She'll be taking notes this evening. And we'll be using that information in our resubmission to address any comments that we hear tonight. I've also got team members from the architect team IBI group, and Henry Bernstein will be presenting the development proposal to you later this evening. Next slide, please. In terms of an agenda, I'm just briefly going to highlight the planning framework that applies. I think Taya did a great job outlining the applicable policies, and I'll try not to be as repetitive. Then I'm just going to touch on what applications and supporting materials have been submitted, and then I'll pass it over to Henry, who's going to walk us through the development proposal. Next slide, please. In terms of the surrounding context, I think we all know the site very well. Some of the highlights and observations that we found in preparing our planning rationale is Ontario Street and the importance of that corridor linking the highway to the downtown, and some of the existing uses in the area that service this neighborhood, including some of the commercial amenities like a grocery store, restaurants. There's some employment uses to the north, and then we've got some higher density residential uses and low density residential uses to the south, as well as some commercial amenities to the south as well. We also know that there is the the river to the west. I'm just trying to confirm. Oh, sorry, it's a 12-mile creek. Sorry, I had it written down. It was kind of going through my head, so I apologize. 12-mile creek to the west. I think it's an important recreational facility. Great trails along it. And then we've got Alex Mackenzie Park to the east. We also know that there are low-rise residential neighborhoods further east and to the southeast of the site, as well as some low-density residential uses to the south. We know that the former GM plants to the north and to the west. We know that this site was previously used for parking for that site. Next slide, please. You heard earlier about the policy framework that applies. I do want to highlight a couple of things from provincial policy. We know that the province requires municipalities to intensify and build within the urban boundary. I think it's very important that recent changes to provincial policy further emphasize the need, and that requires the region and the city to optimize land, specifically in areas that can accommodate intensification, especially in areas within the built boundary. And what that does is that prevents sort of urban sprawl. And we know this in St. Catharines, especially, where there is nowhere else to grow and expand. It's, the city itself is planned to accommodate 95% of all of its growth within its built up area. So within areas that are already developed. Next slide, please. In terms of the land use itself, we know that the site is designated medium density residential. We know that there are land use permissions that permit a range of uses. So a range of residential permissions are allowed. Those include, semi-detached street townhouses, quadruplexes, apartments. There's also local commercial uses that are permitted on site, and the proposal conforms to the land use permissions. However, an amendment to the official plan is required in order to increase the density and redesignate the lands from medium density to high density. Next slide, please. We also know that back in 2017, the site was rezoned to a site-specific R3 142 zone, and it has a holding provision on it, which Taya walked us through earlier, related to the requirement for record of site condition and making sure that the land is suitable for residential purposes. But the site-specific zoning also permits a range of residential uses, including duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, townhouses, and apartments. However, the proposal doesn't conform, since we're looking to increase the height and density on the site and create site-specific performance standards. Next slide, please. So in terms of what we've done, based on our analysis of the applicable planning framework, we realize that this site is an ideal location for higher density uses, can accommodate more density than it's currently permitted. And it can help the city and region in achieving its intensification targets. It's a walkable neighborhood, in our opinion, with commercial amenities nearby, including a grocery store, which we mentioned earlier. It has access to public transit, including bus transit along Ontario Street. And it has the opportunity to add transit users and increase the feasibility of transit in the area. So opportunities to improve transit. And then finally, the site is, in our opinion, large enough to provide transition to the lower density residential areas that surround it. So it's large enough to accommodate a lot of density, in our opinion. And we think it is currently underutilized, so it can accommodate more density. So with that analysis, we passed it over to the IBI group who came up with this concept plan. But in support of that, we know that we've kind of listed the additional studies that support it, like the noise study, functional servicing report, and stormwater management report, which makes sure that the existing servicing for the site and existing infrastructure can support the proposed development. We looked at traffic and what potential impacts can accommodate on site. We did a shadow study. IBI group did architectural plans, and they worked with the landscape team to create a landscape plan. Our firm did the planning rationale, and we also did a tree inventory and preservation plan. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to highlight some of the key elements of the proposal. It's 9 stories, 32 meters in height. There are a total of 351 apartment units, 14 of which, as well as 14 townhouse units provide that transition to the south. And then finally, we've got some parking and bicycle parking as well. Those are just the highlights. So at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Henry, who's going to walk us through the design, and then we can finish up with some questions. Thank you.
Thanks so much, David. And my name is Henry Burston. I'm a director at IBI Group. And like my colleague David, I did also want to thank you very much for coming out tonight and joining us to hear about this proposal. And we also want to hear from you because as residents from the area, we value your insights and perspectives. Next slide. And you can go to the next slide. Thank you. Our firm and I believe in creating projects which are both urban and improve the quality of the pedestrian and public realm, creating more diverse uses along sidewalks to create a much more engaging city life. Also creating sustainable and durable buildings which allow opportunities for home ownership. What I'm going to show you here in this next few slides are some examples of proposed and completed work which you can see animate the street, allow for integration of lush vegetation and landscaping. Some of these designs are modern. Next slide. Others are a little bit more of a timeless expression, but all we believe are positive additions to their neighborhood and streetscape. Next slide. It's our goal for this project to achieve that as well. Next slide. I'm going to introduce you to the context. Next slide. If you can go to the aerial. So here you see the aerial of the site bounded in red. It's 2.76 acres. We know that I'm going to touch upon some of the areas that are a little bit more sensitive to the site, which particularly the south and the west frontages, which are lower rise, but also, as you've seen from David's description, there are different forms which could find themselves on those particular blocks. And we also see Alexander Mackenzie Park to the east, and of course the former GM site to the north. The site is highly underutilized. It acts as a surface parking lot surrounded by a chain link fence. And when you look at the current condition, one might more accurately call Pleasant Street Unpleasant Street, because there are no street trees, you've basically got a street that's characterized by mainly surface parking up until the community center at the corner of the arena. And Thomas Street has a park, but it has been completely fenced off, with much of its frontage being reserved for bleachers, service, storage buildings, batting cages, and other baseball diamonds. It's basically an active park. Next slide. So here you can see it's not a very friendly pedestrian frontage, and certainly no visibility from other buildings or what you would call eyes on the street. Next slide. The next slide. So here you can see our project that's been overlaid within the aerial. And what the first thing that you're going to see is a widening of the streets. There's going to be a widening of Pleasant by about 13 feet, adding to the overall right-of-way width and creating wider sidewalks and boulevards. Thomas Street is also going to be widened by about 1 meter, another 3 feet, to facilitate good size boulevards. And what we're trying to do with this is really create a building that creates an urban street wall and a perimeter around the street to create a much more pleasant pedestrian experience. Next slide. So we're proposing a 9-story mid-rise building which addresses the major street frontages and forms a U-shaped building which surrounds a lush outdoor amenity space. The building is terraced in multiple directions, with a 7+2 story expression on the north, east, and west facades. And the building terraces down towards the south from 9 to 7 and 5 stories. And there's a 1-story link connecting the two buildings, which also frame the outdoor amenity space. On top of that 1-story link, we also anticipate having more outdoor amenity space related to the building. To the south, there are 14 townhouses, which will provide both a transition in terms of form and larger family-sized homes with individual front and backyards and independent parking below. The site is accessed off Thomas Street, and it leads to a ramp and loading, which are both for the mid-rise and the townhouses. There will be some surface parking at the south end of the townhouses, but the majority of the parking will be located in one level of parking below grade. And all of the service and loading garbage functions for the building will be hidden and closed from view within the building. Next slide. Here you can see the ground floor, which will feature a much wider sidewalk. This is you can already start to see the road widening and a 3.9 meter road widening that I described at the north end. So that's going to allow for Pleasant Street to have a lobby frontage, which you can see in yellow. And then the rest of that frontage in blue will be about 5,300 square feet of commercial, with the ability of that to spill over into these larger sidewalks. So at the west side, you're basically, go back, please. You're going to see a 7.5 meter or 24-foot wide sidewalk. As you move towards the corner, the sidewalk increases to about 45 feet. So to put that into perspective, most sidewalks are 5 to 7 feet in width. So what we're really trying to do is create opportunity for that commercial to really spill out and engage with the street. And you can see that there's opportunities for additional planters and seatings within that area. As you continue along the east side of the building, what we have are grade-related units, which have individual yards, and that continues on into the pedestrian or the mews, the lower-scaled mews between the townhouses and the north side of the mid-rise building. You can see framed in the middle the orange, basically more of a pinkish red color for the indoor amenity space, which is going to be connected to the outdoor amenity space. And there's also continuing with that building on the south would be west corner. That's where you're going to see the ramp and the loading functions all within the building in gray. And just south of the townhouses in the southeast corner, we're introducing a little talk lot, which is going to be a children's playground, which will allow for a lot of for both the mid-rise and the townhouses. Next slide. So these, and we're just going to cycle through these. These effectively show the building as it continues to terrace, and it has units around the entire perimeter of the double loaded corridors. Next slide. Next slide. And then we start to get into the stepping with the 5-story step back. Next slide. Again, the 7, we're at the upper level. The next slide. So this is a north-south section through the site. So here you can see that we've made a concerted effort to move the mid-rise building as close to Pleasant Avenue as possible. And that is about 150 feet away from the south property line right now. So, and what we've done is we've used the townhouses as a transition for scale, as another way of transitioning down to the neighborhood. So we have a 3-story townhouse, which is again also about 57 feet away from the property line in this specific location. Next slide. So these are the elevations, and I think that they're probably going to be easier to walk through the perspectives, but this is Pleasant Avenue. Next slide. Then we have Thomas Avenue elevation, and the next slide being the interior townhouse elevation. So maybe we can go to the perspective, please. So this is a view along Pleasant Avenue. The building is really has an industrial feel with red brick and steel channels as the primary aesthetic elements. The building features, as you can see, a number of steps as we lead towards the corner, and this elegant glass box being the vertical feature on the corner, and also kind of marking this area of congregation for the community and spilling out from that commercial space. And the upper levels are really kind of more categorized as a little bit lighter in terms of expression, sitting on top of that 7-story, more robust aesthetic. Next slide. Along Pleasant Avenue, so you see new street trees. This is an opportunity to create a little bit of a lay-by. We have 2-story lobby with a highly accentuated lobby entrance, punctuating the corner. And next slide. Really, the idea of the streetscape is that it's completely transformed, with the lower levels having planters and seating, all new street trees, opportunities for canopies and controlled signage, and even potentially public art on the corner of the property. Next slide. So in terms of the landscape concept, what you see here is really the idea is that they would be introducing rich materials that distinguish the outdoor patios. This would really, we think, be a great place for people to have an ice cream or a drink after a baseball game or after an activity in the park. And then also there's been a concerted effort to make plantings that are sustainable. Next slide. Grade-related units, which we talked about, these are individual front yards, which have opportunities for eyes on the street, a much safer pedestrian environment, each with canopies and individual entrances, so you get a sense of ownership, and also really a kind of a more manicured frontage along not only the interior, but also Thomas Street. And next slide. And of course, we want to have opportunities for play within the proposal, with these being private amenities for the residents, but you see softer lines in the landscaping, kind of contrasting the harder lines of the architecture, really a nice collection of material palettes to soften things up. And we really like the opportunity of having a little children's playground at the south end. We think that's going to be a very nice addition for families in the area. And overall, we believe that this is going to be a transformative and a positive change for this site. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much to David and Henry. David, did you have anything in closing, or that's if I can move on to the next step? Perfect. Okay, great. That's excellent. Thank you very much. I'm just going to pull up a slide before we move into questions, because that is the next sort of step here. We've heard both presentations. I just want to go over some reminders before we move into the questions. So just get myself organized here. Okay, so as we move into this next stage of looking to the attendees and those who are participating, whether on the Zoom meeting or viewing from home via YouTube, or maybe even not watching it live, but we'll be following up on this in the coming days. This time period is for us to understand some of the comments and questions that might be out in the community, and to answer them about what's been submitted with the application. I will ask that all participants remain muted for now. I will be going through the list of registered participants who are in the Zoom meeting live right now, and I'll be calling on people one at a time and providing them an opportunity to ask any questions or say any comments if they have any. If you don't want to say anything, there is no need. That is absolutely okay. I would request that anyone who does wish to speak, please keep their comments between 2 and 5 minutes. We do have a number of people on the call, so just in respecting everyone's time and to keep information moving throughout this meeting. Everyone can just be mindful of their time. And please also recognize that this is an opportunity to hear from a diverse range of perspectives. And so it is appreciated that everyone is respectful of each other and differing opinions. If staff observe that there is any disrespect within the meeting, you will be muted. And if it continues, you will be removed from the meeting. So please keep that in mind as well. And staff will be listening intently to what is being said. We are taking notes because this is all going to help us with our review of the application and understanding the community feedback. Another request that I have is just if everyone can please be mindful that their comments are actually relevant to the planning applications that we are considering. These are applications for official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. They are planning applications and we have to review them against planning matters. So please do keep your comments relative to 10 Pleasant Avenue and those applications. If you have comments on other matters, things within the neighborhood, other sites around here, other projects that the city has going on, those are welcome comments, just not in this forum. This forum is specific to these applications for official plan amendment and zoning amendment. As I say, if you have other things that you're interested in, please feel free to reach out to me following this open house and I can direct your questions to where they are most appropriately handled. And if there are upcoming other engagement opportunities, I'm happy to direct you to those avenues and make sure that your comments are heard in the most appropriate setting. Anyone can contact me after this meeting by email, mail, phone. I can put my contact information up at the end of the meeting again. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen and then start calling on participants one at a time. And when I call on you, if you can just unmute, turn your camera on if you would like to, and we can begin. So just going to, okay. First up, sorry, just got too many windows open now that the presentations are done. Just take me a minute to get my bearings here. So the first person I have, I'm just going to see if they're here. Do we have Samantha Middleton? I'm not seeing them. Okay. Next up, I've got Kristen Webb.
Hi, thanks, Taya. Is it all right if I share my screen?
No, unfortunately, I can't allow anyone to share their screen during the meeting.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. So I'm here today representing the Niagara Community Benefits Network. We're a very new organization and small community group made up of volunteers from community organizations, local institutions, and regional residents who have come together with one goal, to have community investments leveraged to better the lives of all people in Niagara region. We're currently working on and supporting the Niagara 2022 Canada Summer Games, for example, with some of their social procurement efforts, as well as ensuring that some of their excess food and other sort of related materials go back to the community, as an example of some of the work that we're currently doing as we're just getting started up. I'm here today to talk a little bit about our vision for this project. So just a little bit of background, what our vision of community benefits in Niagara, what that means is that every infrastructure project in Niagara will leave a lasting impact on our cities for generations to come. So basically, we want to ensure that there are citizen-led community benefits agreements that can ensure that the great economic profit of these projects includes investment in building the city we all need. For example, providing affordable housing, creating equitable and inclusive employment opportunities, considering environmental sustainability, growing local business, and breaking the cycle of poverty. And what that means for this situation is we are hoping to see a CBA, a community benefits agreement for 10 Pleasant Avenue. Specifically referencing in this presentation or in this speaking opportunity, we have an arrangement where a coalition of area residents and community organizations can work with the applicant or owner to address a broad range of community needs, which will provide safeguards to ensure that residents share in the benefits of major development like 10 Pleasant Avenue is. Our ask in this, and what I'm here to request, is that 10 Pleasant Avenue rezoning bylaw amendment does actually provide the city of St. Catharines with an opportunity to require the property owner to negotiate in good faith a community benefit agreement that includes something along the lines of, at minimum, 30% of units built that are built are designated affordable housing for families making under $30,000. Additionally, 10% of the jobs in construction will be hired from equity-seeking communities through things like apprentice programs and things like that. And in addition, at least 50% of materials and supplies will be procured from local small businesses, social enterprises, businesses that pay a living wage, etc. And finally, the city should explore whether any tax deferral or abatement or development charge credits / community benefit charges can be made available as a condition of the property owner's willingness to negotiate a CBA with the community. Our offer, and why I'm here today asking this, is that as the Niagara Community Benefits Network, though we are small, we are a member of a provincial coalition, the Ontario Community Benefits Network. And so we can provide city planners and the applicant with information, workshops, and precedent as well regarding community benefits agreements and social procurement policy, as well as support and connection to the new social procurement policy social procurement portal from York University, as well as connections and supports to additional folks who can help out with those kinds of aspects of community benefits agreements. And that is the majority of what I wanted to say. I'm also happy to put in my contact information in the chat as well. As the kind of interim director of the Niagara Community Benefits Network, I would be happy to talk further about this with anybody who is curious, whether you are presenting or speaking as well from a resident's perspective or from this planning perspective. I would really appreciate your genuine consideration of including community benefits agreements in projects like this moving forward, because there's an incredible opportunity here that can't be wasted to ensure that it genuinely does benefit the entire community in more ways than one, from the beginning to actually putting people in homes. And our website, by the way, is niagarabenefits.ca. So please feel free to check that out as well.
Thank you. Okay. I'm just taking notes. I think we'll just take notes on the sort of comments that people have. If there's any clarifications that we can provide, staff will, but if it's just things for us to take back and consider, we'll do it that way. Okay, thanks, Kristen. All right. So next up, I have Helen Lee. Helen here.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm just a resident near St. Catharines, so I'm just really observing the meeting. I don't really have any comments right now to present. You can move on to the next person.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you.
After Helen, I have Holly. Holly Tao.
Yes, I am here.
Okay, excellent. Do you have any questions or comments at this time?
No,
Okay, all right, thank you.
thank you.
And just as we go through this, if that's true for others as well, that's absolutely okay. If you think of anything following the meeting, please do reach out and let me know. As I mentioned earlier, there's no decisions being made today, so I'm happy to answer any comments and questions moving forward. Next on the list, I have Jillian Barkley. I'm just looking through the list of participants. I don't think I see Jillian on the meeting. I'm going to move on to the next one, which is Rob Gill. Do we have Rob Gill? Okay. And then I've got Ryan Ravondo. Okay. I'm going to start checking the list of participants before I announce these names, I think. Sorry, everyone. And Dennis Edel.
I'm here.
Okay, excellent.
You had some slides?
I do. Just give me 1 second to get those up. And just so we're clear, because I know with that Kirsten was asking about sharing her screen. So we're not able to share screen, but we did have some people who sent materials in advance. That's the reason why I do have some materials to share for this presentation. And let me just make sure I get the right one for you.
Yeah, I had 5 slides. I think 2 of them made it through the censors.
Okay, excellent. Then, because this one, let me just make sure. Okay. All right, can you just confirm that's the right one?
That's it. That's one of them. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, just let me know when to advance through them, Dennis, and you can go ahead.
There's only 2. Okay. Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, depending on what the time is. My name is Dennis Edel, and I'm representing the Coalition for a Better St. Catharines. We are a citizens-led group concerned about the future of our city. And we thank Taya and the city's planning department for holding an open and public meeting. And we hope that the city carefully considers citizen comments expressed here today. We oppose this application, and we think there are many good reasons why the city should not grant it. And I'm more than happy to entertain questions after my presentation. I think the first thing that the city needs to do, 10 Pleasant Avenue is a parcel of the former GM factory site. So in considering the developer's application, we asked the city to carefully review the track record of the ownership group and the title problems with the GM site that we've experienced over the last 5 years or more. And this includes ignoring violations of code, of city fire codes and building bylaw violations, and forcing the city to go to court for compliance within an expensive and protracted legal battle. So we think it's very important before we grant this application that the city reviews the track record of the applicant itself. So for this slide, the detection at 10 Pleasant Avenue of excessive levels of numerous toxic and carcinogenic industrial contaminants leaking from the former GM site, and all of which far exceeded provincial or Canadian water quality standards. As 10 Pleasant Avenue is contiguous with the rest of the GM brownfield site, it cannot be considered safe, 10 Pleasant Avenue, until the entire GM site is remediated. Next slide, please. In December of 2020, despite earlier claims that the site was sealed, the Minister of Environment detected a significant and continuous discharge of PCBs, a known carcinogen, at the GM manhole, once again, at 10 Pleasant Avenue. 18 months later, we have yet to hear from the ministries whether this discharge continues or what steps have been taken to remedy the situation. Once again, until the entire GM site is remediated, any residents of this site, this proposed site, would likely be exposed to health hazards from toxic industrial chemicals leaking from the entire GM site. In considering a high-density site at 10 Pleasant Avenue, the city cannot cede responsibility for site condition reports or any other procedures to the Ministry of Environment. We question their ability to monitor and enforce standards for a contaminated site. And Ontario's Auditor General in November 2021 said that the Environment Ministry does not conduct adequate regulatory activities to reduce the risk of occurrence of the most hazardous spills impacting human health and/or the environment, and its enforcement regime does not effectively ensure compliance with the regulations that do exist. Finally, when we look at the 55-acre GM site holistic, it sits on the approach to the downtown of St. Catharines. It has the power to revitalize the neighborhood and the city if we approach it with the community in mind and a considered vision for a better future. There's good reason to take a measured approach as we embark on the secondary planning process for the Ontario Street Corridor. And you
Mr.
urban
Adele,
planners-
Mr.
Yes.
Adele, we need you to stay on topic for 10 Pleasant Avenue. This open house tonight is not discussing the secondary plan process.
I would disagree with you, Tammy.
We're going to ask you to stick
Right.
to 10 Pleasant Avenue. Thank you.
I have one more sentence. Long-term visions are rarely achieved through an uncoordinated approach of one-off projects like this one. By establishing a plan working towards a comprehensive vision, we can ensure that the result is valuable, desired, and lasting. And thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Dennis. Okay. All right. The next on my list, I have Megan Bowman. I don't think I see Megan here. I'll check for our next speaker. Looking for Keith Cumming. I don't think they are here either. Okay. Next up, I have, Dawn Sawyer. Dawn here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great.
So hi, am I ready to go, Dan?
Yeah, I'll just give me 1 second and I'll get everything rolling here. Okay. Okay, there you are.
Thank you. I want to emphasize that I'm speaking from the point of view of a Hague neighborhood resident, and that many of my observations will be not only from that perspective, but I think reflecting the concerns that others in the community may not necessarily have, at least with the same intensity. And I think one of the difficulties I'm having here and is that we're being instructed to stay on this particular 350 apartment block, but in fact, it can't be viewed in isolation. And certainly those of us living in the Hague neighborhood are all too aware of that. And so I'm going to really just speak and try to reiterate and try to support two basic concepts. And the first one is that no development of any part of the GM site, and that's a 55-acre site, not a 3-acre site, should be approved until all surface and subsurface contaminants are removed and the entire property is remediated to provincial building standards. And the second one is that no development of any part of the site should take place until a community-driven redevelopment plan is completed and approved. We're trying to look at this in isolation, and it isn't. It's part of a community, it's part of a larger plan, it's part of a larger parcel. If you go, Taya, if you go to the next slide for me, please. What I really want to do living in the neighborhood is just, and a lot of, I'm not going to speak to this, nothing more boring than people reading their PowerPoint, but there are concerns that we have that maybe other neighborhoods don't have. I want to say, first of all, that I listening to Mr. Burston in particular, I'm impressed with the apartment proposal. The point is this the right place for it? I'm really pleased with his step back, his transition from single family dwellings, the emphasis on landscaping. So there's a lot of good things about this, and I want to acknowledge that. But it has to be viewed in a larger context of the neighborhood, the community. So I'm not going to touch on really the first two, because I think, you've already recognized, and there's an attempt there with the shadowing, with the step back. I don't know. I haven't done you're doing the planning to see what that shadowing effect is going to be. Are the schools, we've shut down Memorial School in the area, are the schools sufficient in the area to take care of another 1,000 residents? Those are questions we need to ask. But maybe the most important one is that those of us in this neighborhood are living next to a toxic waste area, and to simply dismiss that as not being relevant isn't not only not fair, it's really disrespectful of those of us who are living in adjacent to that property. If I could go to the next one, Taya. This is an interesting neighborhood. It's one of the oldest residential neighborhoods in the city. Many of the homes date back to 1915 and before. And there's many needs here. And we have to look at this particular development in terms of how is it going to meet those needs. We have single housing right here adjacent to the site that we've already seen proposed. We have one of the ugliest streetscapes in, if not St. Catharines, the whole Niagara region. We have a falling down the Hague Bowl facility that's overused since we no longer have the Y, among other things, to utilize. And we have an industrial waste land that has totally degraded the neighborhood for years. So this is a neighborhood with a lot of needs. Does this address those needs? If I could go to the next one, Tanya.
And Don, just before you start, I just want to let you know you've got about a minute and a half left of your time.
Yeah, okay. The point is that I can't believe that's exactly accurate, but anyway, the big thing is where's the overall plan here? How can we judge this until we see how it fits with the larger plan? You mentioned in passing that the Ontario Corridor secondary plan had been authorized, but had not been enacted before this application came. Well, that's fine, but now we need to view it in terms of that overall corridor development and what the overall plan is. And I got involved with this 5 years ago because we wanted to work with the city to ensure that whatever development took place on the GM lands not only complemented and benefited our neighborhood, but complemented and benefited the entire city. If I could go to the next one, please. The big, and I just want to, and I did this in part because I want there to be a written record of my comments, even if I can't get through all of them in the 5 minutes I've been allotted, and that there has been no engagement with the city, with the neighborhood about what this overall site should look like. And that should be a priority before the planning department goes any farther. Next one, please. And one of the biggest issues, of course, is the pollution. And you can't read this, but you've got the pension report. You don't need me to, but I want to draw attention to the fact that this is a highly contaminated site and that this particular portion we're looking at is adjacent to it. And we can't ignore that. Next, please.
That's the end.
Okay, all right, you took one out. But I want to just emphasize that again, those 2 points, that we have to look at it in terms of what is the overall plan here. This looks like a really great apartment building. But when we look at it in a 55-acre context, is this the best place for it? In 2017, as was alluded to earlier, we had a rezoning and we had a plan done by Better Neighborhoods. It had a different proposal entirely. Maybe that would be better here and this apartment might be better elsewhere. We don't know that because there's no overall plan. There's no sense of what is the long-term vision. And finally, we have one resident already that has cancer that might or might not be a result of his living next to this property. We don't want to risk anymore. And no construction should go forward on any of that 55-acre site until it's completely cleaned up of toxins, surface and subsurface. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Don. Okay. Next speaker I have on the list is Rand Campbell.
Hi, so thanks for letting me speak this evening. Most of the points that I would make would be echoed, but one thing I did want to point out is that a lot of people look at Ontario Street as being a major corridor, but it's a really faulty major corridor. And I have very strong traffic concerns with the development of this project. Ontario Street is not really well suited to carrying large amounts of traffic. If you are traveling from the QEW in a southerly direction, there is no way that you can turn right to get out of that corridor. You're going to always be in the corridor, and the earliest opportunity to do that, to turn right, to get out of that corridor, is when you get down to Welland Avenue, and that's a distance of several miles. There are only very few limited opportunities to turn left. And there are a couple at the top of the street. And then again, the next opportunity you would have to get out of that area if you are traveling in a southerly direction is just before, just past the grocery store. There is one opportunity to go, and then again, you're at Carleton. So once you're on that strip, you're stuck. There's no way of getting off of it to access other roads and other areas of the city. It just is not possible. And the biggest problem, of course, is that most of the area is 2 lanes. So you are, and there's not an opportunity, or there doesn't appear to be any opportunity to widen it and to make larger lanes so that there could be good traffic flow. A couple of years ago, in our neighborhood, we circulated a petition asking for an additional stop sign, or not stop sign rather, but stop light at Kensington and Ontario. And we were denied by the region for that. And the people who live in our neighborhood will tell you there are 70 houses in the neighborhood of Woodruff Estates. All 70, except for one person, signed the petition. And all 70 of those people, I'm sure, will tell you that it's almost impossible at certain times of the day to get out of our neighborhood because we only have one exit, and that's onto Ontario Street. So if you're going to be adding a development that has a population, now this one has only about 1,000 people, I would say, but down the line, and I agree with Dawn, you can't look at this in isolation. We have to look at this with the Ontario Street Corridor Plan. That's so important because this traffic situation is unsolvable unless you take a look at the whole picture. And that's basically all I want to say. I think we're creating a traffic nightmare here. And I don't think there's a solution until we look at the whole plan. I think it would be real folly to grant this application without having finished that study, that 2.5-year study of the Ontario Street Corridor. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next person on the list I have is Kayla Bratzlav.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Might be some background noise. Apologize for that.
No problem.
Yeah, doing things from Zoom here, from home. I just wanted to say first that there are some really good things, or really great things in this proposal that we're seeing. I really like the on-street amenities. I think we'll encourage some vibrant community connections. I like the density. I think we need the density if we want to improve the viability of transit and alternative transportation networks, like active transportation. And the below ground parking, I think that's great. You know, right now with what's being requested here is alterations to the zoning so that we can have more density. I would be afraid that if you don't grant these alterations, that you're going to see less density and a different development altogether, something that is less desirable for the community. Two questions that I had. One has to do with affordability and inclusionary zoning. So currently, it's my understanding that there isn't inclusion. Our city doesn't have inclusionary zoning, meaning that you can't require a developer to include affordable housing. I'm wondering when, if there is a date on when that study is going to start, like when the city is going to start studying where inclusionary zoning would be appropriate, and if this property would fit into that area, potentially, anyways. And then on that question, on that topic as well, my second question would be, do planners encourage developers like the one here to work with partners that make it their mission to build permanent affordable housing, like the region, like land trusts, or like housing cooperatives? So those are the two questions about affordability. And then the last question, so I guess there's three questions here. Last question has to do with alternative transportation. I like the fact that there's 50 bike parking spots. I recently had my bike stolen from being locked up on a outdoor bike rack. And so I'm just wondering how secure these biking spots are. And just another question for planning, if there's any way to require bike storage, the same that we require parking, because I think that'd be great. Yeah, my name's Caleb Ratzlaff. I'm running for Ward 4 City Councilor. Thanks.
Thank you, Caleb. I can answer quickly about the bikes and then maybe pass it over to Tammy for the affordable housing component. So with the bike storage that's proposed or shown on the plans right now, there are some enclosed bike lockers indicated on the plan in both the underground parking area and I believe some at the surface level as well. So there are some enclosed lockers on the plan.
Yeah, I missed that.
Yeah, no worries. So just to clarify that, and then Director Tammy Kate can maybe address the affordable housing and inclusionary zoning questions.
Great. Thank you so much. So you had asked about the inclusionary zoning study work that the city is currently undertaking. It's the third part of a series of development studies that we're doing. So the first was development charges. Council approved that background study in bylaw in September of last year, and it became in force and effective January of 2022. The second aspect to that is our community benefit charge strategy work that has recently had a public meeting and will be going to council this Q3 of this year for approval. The third study that we have started, but it hasn't really created a lot of momentum until we're done with community benefits, is inclusionary zoning. The inclusionary zoning work is legislated and it is set in policy that it is the areas around major transit station areas and urban growth centers. So for us, that means our downtown and around the GO station. And unfortunately, this area here would not qualify under that inclusionary zoning. Yes, we always encourage our development community to consult with affordable housing providers, including and not limited to the region, the Y, Habitat for Humanity, and others. Sometimes it's our advice is taken, sometimes it's not. Other times arrangements can't be made depending on the type of development that it is, but it will be a significant conversation moving forward on the Ontario Street Corridor secondary plan.
And thanks, Tang.
Thank you, Caleb, for the comments. Okay, next up, I've got Gregor McDonald. I'm not seeing them on the call, but I just want to give them an opportunity in case they're under a different name. Gregor, if you're here. Okay, I don't think they are. Next, Haley Bateman. Is Haley on the call? Okay. Do we have Linda Cranford? I do see Linda. We'll give you a minute to unmute. There you are.
Hello, how are you?
Good, thank you.
I want to first thank everyone for their presentations. I find the questions very interesting that people have presented ahead of time. I do agree with a lot of these, that number one, the repair of the lands should be the number one importance, and I hope that that is number one with everyone's development. The traffic is another one. As a member of the Woodruff Estates here, I sometimes wait maybe 7-8 minutes to try to get out of the driveway, out of our area. Being more people that are coming in, and there will be more people down the road and across the street. I absolutely feel that I did not see a street light on the corner of Ontario and Pleasant. And I was wondering if, number one, that's included. I hope so, because we need one. The affordable housing to me is very important. We have an area of eclectic group of people, and I feel that we should represent an eclectic group of people. The development looks absolutely beautiful. It takes an effect of the old General Motors with the red brick. We have over 77 years of these wartime homes in the surrounding areas. And I know a lot of cities have taken these homes and made it a special incentive to keep these wartime homes as an important heritage and cultural importance to the city. The one question I didn't see was where the visitor parking is for the high rise. So that's about all. I want to thank everyone for all your questions and all your interesting information. And if you could address the streetlights and the parking for visitors, that would be very helpful. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Linda. So the application has been circulated to the city and regional traffic teams. So they will be looking at traffic considerations, including the need for any additional streetlights as part of the development. And then the other question you had, I believe, was with regards to visitor parking. And there are a few designated visitor parking spaces and spaces for the commercial unit identified. And David, feel free to correct me if I get these numbers wrong, but I think there's a couple spaces in the surface parking lot towards the townhouses at the back, as well as a few spaces in the underground parking level. So there are a number of visitor spaces identified in both locations.
Thank you. I find that very underestimated for the need of parking, because you'll have parking all along Pleasant Avenue and in front of all the homes on Thomas, and that will not be appreciated. So I feel that visitor parking should be big on the list for that.
Just to add to that, thank you, Linda, for your great questions. And we will be following kind of municipal standards. We do want this to be a well-lit area and really something that's a lot safer and pedestrian friendly. For the visitor parking, we did provide a number of spots south of the townhouses. So I think there were maybe about 10 to 12 spots. And the remainder, there's about 36 visitors that are indicated on the plans now. The remainder are within the underground parking, and people would have direct access up to the elevators, and so that they could come out either into the building or out onto the street if they're visiting the townhouses as well. So it's about 36 out of effectively, we have another 307 for the residents, and we also have car share on the site. We have two additional car share.
So, sorry for the noise. The truck's just backing in here. I find that, I don't find that acceptable, because I know you'll have more, and I think that, are you estimating how many parking spots per site, per home?
So at this stage, the parking is one of the elements that's being requested for review through the zoning amendment.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so it's something that we will be evaluating as part of the review of this application. And currently, the numbers that were proposed in the first submission, they don't, they're not quite aligned with how the city does the parking calculation. So we just have to finesse what those numbers actually look like under the city's zoning bylaw and figure out what that ratio request is, and then conduct the evaluation.
Thank you, because it looks like these lovely apartments that you've got designed are maybe for people who might have 2 cars and will have visitors. And I imagine that's what's going to happen. There's going to be a need for parking.
Yeah, maybe I can just add a couple of comments. Thank you, Linda, for your comments. And we do appreciate everyone's comments this evening. We're here taking notes and taking it back with us. As part of the application, we noted that Lee Consulting was retained to provide a transportation study, which included a parking study. And as part of that study, they identified a number of what we call TDM measures, which are measures that help to support other forms and other modes of transportation, like the car share that Henry mentioned, and also proposed a rate of for each of the parking spaces, including 0.1 spaces or 10% for each parking spot as being, or for each unit as being visitor parking. Again, we'll be working closely with staff to get that ratio to a place where they're comfortable to ensure that there is sufficient parking here and we don't impact the surrounding streets. So thank you for your comments.
Can you tell me how many parking spots are on each townhouse?
Each townhouse has the 1 parking space in the garage.
Nothing in front then?
No. So Linda, if we do pull up a site plan for you, you'll notice that these are sort of pedestrian accessed only. So they're not your traditional townhouse with a driveway and a garage in the front. These are townhouses that are accessed from that lane or muse that Henry designed. And the intent is that people would be walking out of their front door into the amenity areas and then taking an elevator down to the subsurface or underground parking for where their vehicles would be stored. Does that make sense?
I think so. So you're saying underground parking is for the high rise as well as for the townhouses?
Correct. There is a little I believe it's 14 spaces on the surface for visitor parking spaces, as well as, for visitors of the complex, whether it be commercial or resident visitors. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, great.
I'll pass that on to the next person.
Thank you, Linda. And thank you, David and Henry, as well for the information. Next person on the list I have is Diana, is it Myrie or Miri?
Hi, it's Diana Myrie. I'm just here as an observer. I'm representing the Canadian Black Chamber of Commerce Hamilton Niagara Region chapter, which is a newly formed entity in this region. I also am a resident in the St. Catharines area, and our offices are located in St. Catharines as well. So no comments right now. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Next I have Liam Coward. Liam, there we are.
Hi there. Hi, folks. Thank you very much. I don't have any questions at this time. Some of it was already addressed by previous speakers. Thank you very much, and thanks for the presentation.
Okay, thank you so much, Liam. Next up, I have Karen Hart. I thought I saw Karen on here earlier, but maybe not anymore. Okay. And then I've got Glenn Brooks.
Hi there.
Hi.
I was concerned about the contamination on the property and the adjoining property, but Don and Dennis Adele addressed it much more eloquently than I could. So I'm going to digress to what they had to say and support their observations.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Glenn. Next, I've got Sarah Mickey.
Hi there. So I've just kind of been taking notes as I've been going along. So in answer to Dawn's question about the schools, I'm the school council chair at Harriet Tubman School, and we are at capacity. So there is no way that we can handle any more students at all. We're actually like over the capacity that we're supposed to be at. I am a resident of Thomas Street, and I've brought it up to some of our city councilors already because the traffic on this street is intense, especially since the methadone clinic came to the corner of Welland and Thomas, and people run stop signs all the time. I've almost been hit many times. Little children have almost been hit on this street many times. Daycare workers have been nearly hit. People speed up and down this street disregarding the stop signs. So my concern is if the only access to this place is on Thomas Street, what safety measures are going to be taken for the residents? Are we going to put in more stop signs? Or are we going to put in speed bumps, anything like that? Because it's already really bad. And we've already complained, like neighbors and I have already complained to council and nothing's been done. So if something could be done, that would be super. I am curious about how the residents around here will be affected by the remediation, like what will be done for the residents, like to protect us. Because like there's got to be stuff in the air. And will the widening of Thomas Street be the entire street, or is it just around the building? And I just had one more question about the parking. As Linda had mentioned, like people on Thomas Street are already like a tad pissy about parking already because of the methadone clinic. So will they be able to like park in front of their townhomes, or is it like, I know everyone wants everyone to like ride their bikes and take public transit, but it's just not a reality. Like everyone on this street has 2 or more cars. So I'm just curious, like, how are we going to fit all of these extra cars and all the parking? And that's it for me.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. So just, I took a few notes on sort of the points that you made there. First thing, as far as the schools, because you did mention that at the beginning, the school boards are part of our circulation list when we send out the applications for review. So we do expect to receive comments from the school boards as they review the application and consider the proposed increase in density. So the comments received from the school boards and the other agencies will be outlined in the staff report in the future. So just so that everyone is aware that we do include them in our review process. The other questions, as far as traffic and speed and some of the driving habits, I've made notes of those concerns. And as I said, it's being reviewed by our traffic team, so we can take those comments back on what people are observing in the community and let those traffic teams know. They will be reviewing those traffic studies that have been submitted and providing their comments as well.
Okay.
Again, those comments will be outlined in the staff report at a future meeting date. And then I'm going to come back to the remediation, but I'll go through the widening. So the road widening that's required along Pleasant and Thomas are just for the extent of this property.
Okay.
So we only take the road widenings on sites that have active development applications. So that's not to say that in the future there wouldn't be a road widening requested for other properties on those streets, but only as they develop or as a project comes up. So for the purposes of this discussion, it's because there's a development application that road widening would be required, and it's just the extent of the subject lands.
Perfect, because otherwise you're going to have angry Thomas Street people. So
and also just on road widenings, because we're there already, it doesn't also always mean that the road itself goes to that full extent. The road widening or the right of way accommodates the road, the sidewalk, boulevard trees, services, all those amenities. It's not, lot line to lot line road that's going to put in. So and then your other question was about parking for the townhouses. They do not have individual parking in front of each of those units at the surface. There's an underground garage space for each of the 14 townhouse units, as well as I think David had indicated some additional underground parking spaces in the overall underground parking level that could be used by those residents as well. And
Okay.
then just making sure I'm addressing all of your points here. Yeah, I think the last comment was on the remediation and concerns with that, which I think we've heard a lot of concerns around the overall remediation of this area. With regards to this site, the holding provision is in place to address the lifting of that holding before any development can take place. Remediation of other lands is sort of a bigger and broader discussion outside of this process. And
okay.
I know that the city's had ongoing review of sort of what that looks like and what's involved. And I think our citizens' health is always at top of mind. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. Next, I've got Jacqueline Bates.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. I just want to let you know that I am a resident of Thomas Street. Actually, I reside at 75 Thomas Street. So my property actually juts into the existing GM parking lot. And as such, I'm the most affected by everything that's going to be happening on this property. One of them, of course, number one is the toxins. And it's going to be in the air pollution and what's going to be done to minimize, regardless of what the dimensions of this building are, what safety measures are going to be taken for people in this area, especially my property. That's one of my questions. And I had a question about the widening of the road. Which side of the road is going to be widened? Is it going to affect the residential side or the park side? So will 1 meter be taken in front of my house, or will it be taken across the street is another question I have. I also have a question of why there's only one access road to this massive undertaking of this building, with the number of cars that would be going in and out. Is this access road is only meters from my home. I also would like to know what is behind my house. There seems to be, on one of the presentations I saw from the planners, that there's kids' playground behind there, but there seems to be a big structure behind there. I don't know if that's a dumpster or what that is. I'd like some information on what that directly behind my house is going to be. It is a nice, beautiful looking development. However, it seems to be more suited for a place where more people take public transportation. As we all know, the parking is woefully, there's just not enough parking for the number of residences and people and visitors in this. And the traffic through one access road, I don't think is sufficient. As somebody else has mentioned and other people has mentioned, that the traffic around here, especially in the summertime when there's a baseball game on, people are parked all the way down the street. Parking's not enough now for people to enjoy the park. And I can't see how this is actually going to operate. And living on this end of Thomas Street, and specifically it's going to be a nightmarish. So I'd like those addressed.
Okay, thank you, Jacqueline. I'm just going to pull up the plan really quickly so that we can point to a few of the things that you were asking about. So I think what you were interested in is this structure here.
Right, yes.
Yeah, so again, the applicant's team can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that is a stairwell to access the underground parking level.
Yes, you're correct. It's effectively an emergency exit stair from the parking garage below.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so
I can assure you there's no outdoor garbage that's going to be entertained on this site. It's all going to be within the building. So that's just what you need to do is if you have underground garage, you need to provide emergency access to in case there is a fire or something. So that's a code-driven issue. So you can see a few of those basically addressing on the corners, and the rest of them are basically incorporated within the buildings themselves.
So that's for those structures. Your other question about the road widening, the road widening is to be taken along the frontage of the subject lands on Thomas Street. So it's actually noted on the plans. I'll see if I can mark it up a little bit. We've got this first line in here. No, it's not going to let me do that. There's the line out here where my cursor is the original property line, and then this second line is the new extent. So the part in between there is what's going to be dedicated as a road widening. So it's a sliver along the entire stretch of Thomas Street, just in front of this subject property.
Emergency access money. That's it.
Okay. And I think I've made notes on your other comments and questions, and staff can take those back. Because I think your other questions about the access and the parking and traffic are all things that are going to be reviewed through the analysis of the proposal. Okay.
Okay.
I'll get rid of that. Did that address your comments, Jacqueline, or did you have any other comments?
Yeah, it's just a one access road. I just think that that's a little crazy to be dumping all that traffic onto Thomas Street, which is a residential neighborhood. I mean, if this was fronting Ontario Street, I could see this development having more credit to it, but this is a residential neighborhood, and to have that many cars coming in and out, like mere meters from homes, I'm just shocked at the size of this project for the size land, and especially the parking is just it's just woefully lacking. And emergency fire, like people leaving, only have one access route out of that property. It's just doesn't even seem safe. And never mind, the shadow effect that it's going to cast on my property and properties down the street from me. It's just, it's a beautiful concept, but it's super high density. And I think there's a reason why it was zoned as medium density. This is, it's a lot. It's a lot. But thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments and questions. Next up, I have Jennifer Dakin.
Hi, Tia. Sorry. Thank you. Just to kind of go off what Jackie was saying, I am a resident of the neighborhood. I live on Chaplin. And as beautiful as the building is, I truly believe one of the main concerns of most of the neighbors I've spoken to is parking. I really think that anyone conducting the studies should try to drive through our neighborhood after 5 o'clock, because we already struggle as it is. As many people have mentioned here, they are wartime houses. The driveways are small, narrow, or in some cases non-existent. So street parking is at a premium. With a 351 unit building and only having 307 parking spots, I think really is unreasonable. And I think the overflow will definitely affect every street in the neighborhood.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. The next speaker I've got on the list is Larry Peroyan. Just checking to see if Larry's on the call. I do not see him. So next is Susan Loiseau. Okay. And do we have Jessica Friesian? Okay. Just looking through who's here. Leslie. We have Carol Badesky.
Hello, I'm
There we go.
here.
Hi.
Hi. I think we've come to accept that a holistic approach is needed. I am also a resident of Chaplin Avenue, along with my partner, Ian. A basic question I wanted to ask that can be quickly answered. Are these actually apartments or condos that are for sale or apartments for rent? The parking definitely an issue. In this past winter, when we had the big snowstorm, no one moved off the street or was able to go to work or to go anywhere, or I don't believe get an ambulance in for 4 days. So the services are not up to par with what we have. I agree that it is a neighborhood in a city where everyone needs a car. Everyone who needs to go anywhere needs a car. The GO train service, as far as I observe, is even worse going to Toronto and beyond than it was last year. So that's also another part of the infrastructure that is really forcing people who have business outside of St. Catharines to have a car and to park a car. And another concern is, I mean, there's 55 acres there. I don't see a reason that more parking can't be included with this project. That's another concern that I have, and it clearly will be short. And there's one more thing I had. But
Maybe I'll chime in the
leave
meantime.
I'll just leave it
So,
there.
hello, everybody. I'm Ian. I'm on Chaplin Avenue with Carol. One of my concerns is that if we change the medium density framework, this particular location, does that then cascade the yet undeveloped GM lands into also being automatically high density? I think that this is a city of neighborhoods. It's a beautiful city. It has many, many old buildings, and it would be, we need to tread carefully as we move into a higher density. I appreciate the Ontario corridor probably deserves some higher density, but Pleasant and Beach at the edge of Mackenzie Park, they don't feel, it feels like that should remain a low to medium density as far as all my experience of being here. So that's really the only thing I really have to say. I will echo the concerns about parking right off Thomas, the only way in to the parking spots. I will also echo the concerns about the leaching of toxic chemicals during construction into the air and into the water.
And I just want to jump back in to say, we'd very much love to see a residential development in that area. Let's not forget that as well. So hopefully we can all work it out.
We do like the building design quite a bit. We like the frontage, the facing, the tree line. That's all good. Maybe a little more gentleness overall.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. Just taking a couple notes here, sorry. Okay. The next person I have on the list, I'm just looking, I don't think they're here anymore, but I'll ask just in case. Jonathan Massey. No. Then I've got Amy Romagnoli. Okay. Sue Obi. And do we have Joanne Webb? Taylor Downs. Kathleen Rocco. Do we have Joanne Keough? We're almost through the list, so just a couple people left. So Walter Hawkins. Larry Lizoy. And I think that's, is there anyone I've missed that hasn't had a chance to speak yet? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody indicate that they haven't had their opportunity to, oh, here we go, Jennifer.
Taya, sorry, just one other question. I completely forgot because I get nervous talking in front of groups. What about the commercial parking? Is there any available? I didn't see that on the plans. I did see visitor parking, but I didn't see any for commercial, like for the storefronts.
Yes, so I believe the plan does indicate a number of spaces that are dedicated towards the commercial use as well as visitor. I can see if I can get the exact number of those so I can confirm. Just take me a second to check out the plan here.
I can jump in. There's 36 parking spaces that are proposed to be shared between visitors and the commercial uses.
Thank you, David. And thanks for the question, Jennifer. I also see Sarah has her hand up.
Yeah, I'm Sarah's husband, Chris. I'm just wondering if I'd be able to chat because a few people missed.
Sure, yeah, if you're registered together, that's fine.
When GM was operational, Thomas Street was mayhem at shift change. And like, I think it was Jackie that was saying, it's going to be the same. Like there's a stop sign at 80 Place in Thomas, which is sometimes paid attention to, most times neglected. We've asked for speed bumps to be put in on the street. Nothing happens. And also just to kind of echo what Jackie said, medium density is for a reason. We back on to Memorial and the development there is like, you know, they say they're right in the sweet spot of medium density, but they're at the high end, making it more almost on the cusp of high density. And our city's infrastructure is not set up to handle this. Like, I don't know what the city expects to get out of having all these condo developments go in all over the place. Like there's so many in the works right now. It just feels like developers have the upper hand and the city needs to take control and have a more open conversation about what's realistic. Like things can be done and fit in with the neighborhoods that they're going to be a part of. But when you push for maximum density all the time, you're going to create such a bottleneck of problems down the road. And I think people just care too much about the here and now and not about the 5-10 years from now.
Thank you for the comments. I don't think I'm seeing anyone else who's indicated that I skipped over them unintentionally or missed them in asking for any speakers. So with that really is the sort of finale of the open house. I think we've gone through the presentations to share information. We've heard a lot of really great input and feedback and comments from the community. And I really appreciate everyone taking the time to join us this evening to share their perspectives and get involved in what's going on. I think it's really helpful and good for the discussion and for staff consideration as we move forward with reviewing this application. Just in closing, the role now moving forward is staff and the agent, I think, will digest all of the information received tonight. And as I mentioned earlier, we are in the process of reviewing all of the materials that have been submitted with the application. We will continue to work on this and consider all of the feedback and then put together a staff report with a recommendation that will be brought forward to council at a future date. We will be issuing notice of that public meeting. And so if you are interested in participating or providing comments for that process, please do keep an eye out. And following this open house, if you have any additional comments or questions, something that didn't get answered that you were hoping was going to be addressed, please do reach out to me and send me any comments or questions that you might have, and I'll be happy to get back to you. And I'll just look to see if either Tammy or Margaret had anything else they wanted to add before I shut down the live stream and wish everyone a good evening.
I don't, but I do want to thank everybody who came out tonight on a Thursday on a beautiful night to listen to what the proposal is for this site. And also please know that you're being listened to. So there is multiple people on this video call tonight who are taking notes of the questions that were being asked, the comments being made, so that we can capture them through the analysis process and in the staff report coming forward. So if you have anything else that you want to, you hang up tonight and you think that you maybe forgot something, please reach out to the planning department, specifically to Teo, with your questions, and we'll be happy to answer them. Thank you for coming tonight.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone, and have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you, everyone.